I gotta wait. How long I gotta wait for a press record?
Go.
Welcome to the share, where Miss Dreme always has a story.
I'm Dreme, a black woman with many beautiful interconnecting identities. A few I will name at this moment as we get started on this podcast journey together. A Bostonian, born and raised in the inner city, Dorchester and Roxbury neighborhoods, to a teenage single mother who has my whole heart. An educator, I've been working with youth and children since my teenage years, and formally, I have been teaching almost a decade now. That's wild to think about. An entrepreneur, I am the founder of The Chair, a black and brown centered tech platform dedicated to supporting people on their hair journey, where you can design hairboards, connect to hairstylists, and share hair care tips for a more joyous experience. I have a workable site, my prototype. It took me 2 years to build, and now I'm on this adventure that you're currently on with me. My goal for this podcast is to share stories, black stories, educator stories, entrepreneurship stories, and hair stories. I want you to leave each episode with the opportunity to gain new insight, just a glimpse into my world or the worlds that are featured on my podcasts, a little chuckle during your day or night, possibly a little anger to encourage you to advocate for justice, and hope to continue learning and dreaming. So come in and listen to the beautiful voices in the chair as they share their stories, starting with me.
Where we share stories in the chair.
All right, everyone, this is Lisa. Lisa, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name's Lisa. I use she, her pronouns. I'm in my late 40s. I am of European and Persian heritage, though read and experience the world completely as a white person. I am a single mom by choice to an amazing 15-year-old, and I love to make art.
During the resurgence of Black Lives Matter in 2020, I felt like there were so many white book clubs.
Mm-hmm.
And
we love a book club. A latte and a book club, and check, I'm done. And then I'll tell you about this thing I heard on NPR.
Yeah. And I'm always like, okay, well, after doing the book club, then what is the next step for you? How are you having these conversations outside besides the book club? The book club is, okay, here's your space to be able to say all the wrong things, say all the things that may hurt or you're confused about. But then after that, being like, okay, what is the next moment? And I always wonder, like white people in education, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And it's crazy because when we met, we already started having these conversations as soon as we met. So I was like, wow, this, because at first, like for me, talking to any white educator, I'm always like, why are you here?
Yeah.
Like, that's always my first question. What brought you here? Because if you're saying, hey, I'm here to make a difference, okay, what does the difference look like? So I will always start with this. What does the difference look like? How do you feel you're making a difference? Why can't you make a difference in your neighborhood? Yeah. And when they can't answer that question, then I say, you need to think about that and you need to come back to me.
Yeah.
Because then we're having a different conversation here. What is it about coming into black and brown neighborhoods that make you feel better about yourself? I haven't really been getting a lot of answers, but I think it's just a conversation that I'm always willing to have because I'm like, well, if we're in the space working with black and brown kids. Yeah. Right? It's the same thing my mom was talking to me about. She was like, well, what about you working in predominantly white independent schools? Because it's been a thought. It's been throwing it around, thinking about applications and stuff or teacher roles. I could work there, but then I would have to still ask myself that question. Why are you in this space? And my mom says, well, you could be like a Miss Farlow, which is one of my favorite teachers from high school. She was a biracial teacher, black, white. And my mom said that because she was like, well, for those 5 black kids. Right. But also, she was definitely, because she identified as biracial, she was still having these conversations with white kids and such. But for me, it would be like, well, what does different look like? I think when a kid feels different, then they want to be seen. Yeah. And so for me as a black person in a white space, that's my other argument. It's being like, not only am I here for Black kids, but I'm also here for anybody who feels different.
Yeah. And we know that when there's more Black and brown teachers in a school, the education is better for all students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is a sad commentary on white relationships, but is a real thing in this country. I think part of what, to me, it's important to live in the neighborhood is also to make sure the kids know that there's value in their community. That I feel like the narrative of so many schools is like, get your education so you can get out.
Mm-hmm.
And what that implicitly communicates about where you're coming from. And one of the things I appreciated about the school where you and I met and worked together is that I got to run this internship program for juniors and seniors, right, where they could say, all right, Lisa, here's what I'm interested in doing. Can I get an internship there? And then I could find them an internship somewhere in the city. And I would have conversations like, do you want to be in a predominantly Black or Latinx space, or do you want to be in a predominantly white space? Because you're going to get different things from those spaces.
Mm-hmm.
But let's have that be an explicit choice. Do you want to be in a space where people share your identity and cultural background because that's where you want to pursue a career and you want to see expertise from within your community? Or do you want to go to an internship that's going to be a predominantly white space because that's probably going to be your college experience, and do you want to have some taste of that now? But let's have that be a conscious choice. Let's talk about the benefits of both of those things. Let's talk about what you might experience that could be hard, particularly if you move into a predominantly white space. But let's have that be an explicit conversation. And neither kind of internship is better than the other. It's about what do you want? And then how do we set that up? And I feel like that is part of how I try to move out of a white savior space into a, who are you, young person in front of me? What are your goals? What are your family's goals for yourself? And then how do I help you achieve those goals in all the ways? So not just so you have the academic skills, but if you're going to choose a track where you're going to put yourself in predominantly white spaces, at which our school was not, let's get you some experience with that when you still have a lot of support, because there's a lot to negotiate there. And let's also celebrate that expertise and learning and greatness exists within your community too. And the goal of your education is not to get out. If you choose to go somewhere else, great, but it's not because you have to take your education to leave.
Yeah, I think for me that brings up the word value. Just keeps hitting me over and over and over again, thinking about what the value is. Like for me, it was, well, you were going to this school. I always think about how my mom gave me a choice. I got accepted into BBNN, and I also got accepted into the O'Brien. The O'Brien exam school, public school. And my mom gave me a choice as to where to go. Because before then, she didn't give me a choice. I was in Head Start. I went to public school. Then she pulled me out of public school. I went to charter school. And then she pulled me out of charter school when I tested into the Catholic all-girls school. So I had no choice. So I had these two choices in front of me. And for me, it had nothing to do with race. When I chose, the one thing I wanted to do was study abroad in high school because I thought that was the coolest thing. And BBN offered that, and the O'Brien did not. I was like, well, in the summer I was going up in New Hampshire at overnight camps with white people. So I was like, oh, I know white people. This isn't a problem. It wasn't until I got there understanding that poor whites and rich whites, there's a whole different conversation there. When I went to BBN.
Well, and prep school is a whole other layer.
Prep school, on top of that, yes. And I went to a prep school that starts from kindergarten all the way up. So I came in as a freshman. So there were people who they called lifers there. There were people who came from middle school. So there were all these different dynamics that I just walked into. But I was like, well, they have a study abroad program, so I don't want to go to this school. I ended up not studying abroad. I ended up studying a semester away because I ended up going to Maine. And my mom was like, you went to Maine instead of Rome? and so, but I ended up going the DR in the summer to do restorative work. I think back, I'm like, wow, this is very problematic. Building a house that we didn't finish in a week. It was not great. But I think about the value of the education, right? But being like, okay, I need to get to college. And my mom would always say there's more than these four walls. So I was like, okay, I need to leave. But she really just meant that she didn't want me to be enclosed, never feeling like I didn't have a choice. So me going to college out of state was to be like, oh, I'm moving. I can remove myself from here. But it was more, I felt like every time I kept moving further and further away, I was finding myself in these different aspects. Being a Bostonian living in Chicago was a different world.
Yeah.
Being a Bostonian living in California was a different world. But being able to be like, I miss home,
Yeah.
but what does home look like for me now
Yeah.
as an adult, as a Black woman,
Yeah.
instead of it feeling like, okay, I'm coming home because I'm a failure.
Yeah.
You know, I felt like that was a big conversation
Yeah.
with myself every year when I would come home for Thanksgiving or come home for Christmas breaks, being like, oh, what have you done?
Where we share stories in the chair.
Look, it's my commercial. We will be right back.
It's more than just a bad hair day. It's a journey. Finding the right hairstyle isn't easy, nor is finding the right stylist or the right products. Looking in every corner of the web gets messy, overwhelming, and exhausting. All the ads, the articles, the products, the videos, it shouldn't be this hard, but it is. And now, it isn't. The Chair. A black and brown centered platform where you can design hairboards, connect to hairstylists, and share hair care tips for a new joyful path on your hair journey. Avoid the clutter, save yourself hours, months, and even years of research and poor trial and error. Everything you need and only what you need is in one place. Hairboards made by people like you, for you. Find the right products, the right people, the right answers for you, stress-free. Join the Chair community and make every day a great hair day. When you share your pain, you allow others to help you. And when you share your success, you help others get theirs. Lean on the Chair. We got you. No stress, no strife. In the chair, the chair, the chair. All right.
That to me sits right at the intersection of capitalism and white supremacy. You can never be good enough. And here you are across from me. You've got how many advanced degrees? You won what kind of international scholarship? But still that stuff gets in there like you haven't done enough. You're not good enough. Think about the particular, because I went to a prep school too. I could never be skinny enough. I could never be pretty enough. I could never be, like, as a girl, I was supposed to be this particular kind of smart, but like not actually smart, but maybe smart because I'm at a prep school, but don't act like you're smart. You know, this fucked up sexist bullshit. The faculty actually charged my theater teacher, who I was close to come talk to me about how slovenly my clothes were. My lab mate was in a full body cast from the 5th drunk driving accident that happened that year. There was regular sexual assault happening among the student body, but the faculty chose time to talk about the fact that I like thrifted my clothes and sewed patches on them, because it was all about appearance. It was all about control. It was all about making sure we never felt like we were good enough, because then we could keep striving to try to buy into this thing that doesn't actually exist. I was a straight A student in math, and I was told not to take honors calculus because I wouldn't need it as a girl. Like, what kind of bullshit is that? But right, I believe that. I was like, oh, I must not be smart. I'm getting straight A's at a prep school. I must not be smart. I'm not good at math.
Yeah, my mom, the one thing she instilled in us was, she was like, we talked about this recently. Like, she always, in our house, she would always say C's are average. You can't be average. And so that was like a constant conversation, but it was also the other conversation she would have with us would be like, you stop the world and you ask questions. And so
and you do that. You ask questions that stop people. They don't always like it. Yeah, but there's some good questions.
And so growing up, being like, okay, I can't be average, and I ask questions anytime I'm confused. Ask questions when you need clarity. Ask questions when you're really thinking about the conversations of anything. I think that's why when I went to college and took my first sociology, anthropology class, I was like, this is my life. Like, yeah, I want to keep taking these. I didn't know I could major in this stuff. For me, it was this first time where I felt like things started to click. Oh, we can talk about this. Like my first anthropology paper, we had to pick a concept in our life that we thought about often that had to do with your culture specifically. And I wrote about CP time. Yeah. And just thinking about just like, what does time mean? And then that professor at that time, we had to write a single space. And we had to write in 11-point font, a full page. And he made us change the borders too. So it required us to write a lot. So he was like, the first half isn't anything. It's really the second half where you start to think. And I thought that was such an interesting thought. So like writing about CP time, I was like, okay, writing it. And then halfway through, I was like, okay, all the first thoughts are out. Then I had to really keep digging into it. And it was like, okay, well, if these are the conversations we can have in this class and really honestly have them, that was like a beginning of opening up so many doors. And then being able to connect it. I'm taking an education course and I'm taking an African American philosophy course and I'm taking these anthropology and sociology courses and I can see the thread through all the classes. Yeah. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing because this is what my brain is on fire in the best way during these moments.
Well, I think that's like one of the gifts that you bring to the world, Dreme, is that you make all the connections and you make them so quickly and you have curiosity about the ones that don't make sense to you, which is like most of them because it's a jacked up system, right? And I think about how much schools act like they want kids to make all the connections or say they do, but in reality, schools don't want that. Because then students would rebel against 99% of what we're doing in schools.
I know, and that's the point. I was like, that's why I became a teacher. If I made these connections 10 years prior, then I could have been faster along in my thought process when it came to certain classes. Like, oh, this class is cool. But I could have been like, this class is cool because. Yeah. Like, I will always remember when I was teaching history to my 8th graders, we were talking about the Holocaust, and in their English class, they were reading Night. Yep. I knew they were reading that, but, I don't know their syllabus. I don't know anything. And in my class, we're like working and looking at history. I were using things that I found on the internet and also facing history in ourselves, like mixing and matching. And one of my kids said to me, they're like, Miss Dreme, you know what we learned the other day? It came up in the book, but in a different way. Yes. I'm doing my job. Then another kid came from English and they're like, Miss Dreme, you know what we read yesterday? Yeah. And then it came up in what we were looking at that day, but just a different perspective. And I was like, this is the point of education. So the classes didn't seem so separate. Yeah. It felt like we were having one big conversation, but from different perspectives. This is the job of a teacher. And so when I went to go talk to the English teacher, being like, hey, what else are you doing? And she was like, my kids keep talking about you in my class. And so it was more of a disdain. And I was like, no. Because then I was like, yeah, they're talking about you in my class too. And
it's a good thing.
But she was just like, dismissive of me. And I was like, no, we're missing. This is the point. Because then they're seeing history doesn't feel like history and English doesn't feel like English. It feels like life. Right.
And that they could recognize they were hearing different things about the same thing. Yep. I remember my 3rd year teaching, I was teaching at a school. The kids read The Color Purple in 9th grade. I was out at this school too. And this 9th grader who I didn't teach, but she was friends with a bunch of my students, she comes up to me one day and she goes, Miss G, can I ask you a personal question? I said, sure. She goes, can we go over there, like kind of out of the main hallway? I said, sure. I'm getting a little worried that, and she goes, I don't mean to disrespect you. I'm just really trying to understand. I said, okay. And she goes, were you raped by your father and that's why you are the way you are? And I was like, whoa. And luckily, I knew she was reading The Color Purple. I was like, are you asking me if I'm gay because I was assaulted as a child because you read that in The Color Purple? She goes, yes. And what I realized in that moment is she didn't have any other queer people in her life. Okay. She was growing up in a space where that wasn't okay, but she knew I was a good person and that like her friends really liked my class and they said I was a good person. And so I could see she was like, and she was so respectful, right? She asked for privacy. She said, I don't mean to be rude, doing all the right things. But the only point of entry she had to queerness was this one character in a book. And so that was like, oh, that's how it happened. Good people get turned when a horrible thing happens to them. It was a narrative that she could fit in with her existing narratives. And that's where I was like, shit, we got to diversify.
Our book list.
The kids absolutely should read The Color Purple. Great book. Not always sure ninth grade is the right place for that book. Great book. But you can't just have this as your one story. And like, thank goodness she had the courage to ask me. And like, I could clarify a whole bunch of things for her. But I think about that over and over again when they're like, well, here's our diversity pick for the curriculum, or here's our one thing. And how often I feel like kids are given one narrative about any given group of people or identity.
And that fits
a broader narrative that somebody's invested in maintaining. Like what I love about the story that you just told is that kids were able to get multiple perspectives and say, but wait, we heard this other thing about this. Because now we're thinking, now we're wrestling, and now we understand, even if you and I share some commonalities, we can have different experiences in the same moment and how important that is.
Yeah.
And just like how much we need to expose young people so that
to
they're
multiple
not
things.
Growing up with tweaked, whacked out versions of why somebody might be who they are. 'Cause let me tell you, that was not a question I was expecting or prepared for.
Oh, no, absolutely not. Oh, and if you're interested to learn more about my experiences as a Black woman and educator in Guangzhou, China, I wrote my first ebook titled Nowhere and Everywhere, Captured Emotions of a Beautifully Broken Love Story. It is on lulu.com. Take a read and see some beautiful photography of mine. Enjoy the rest of the show. That year, it kept happening a lot. Yeah. Specifically that year, I think because like I knew the general agenda of the English, but being like, okay, how can I make, because my kids at the beginning of if I teach history at the beginning of every history class, like the first, I always go, who likes history? Just to take a pulse of the room. And it's usually none. Yeah. And then I always ask, why don't you like history? Right. And then they're like, it's boring. I don't understand the point.
Nothing to do with today.
Yeah.
God, it's done.
And so for me, I'm always like, okay, how can I take this boring stuff and make it modern? Right. And I will always think about, oh man, I had a kid, a biracial kid, but white, Honduran, but very white passing, but curly enough hair that it could braid. So if he braided it, he can kind of look Hispanic, or if he braided it a certain way, he kind of look like he's a little biracial Black kid. So I had one of those kids, and he came into class with a lot of different life experiences, but heavily from his white side of his family, but in a class full of Black and brown kids. Yeah. And so I remember it was like day 2, and he used the word colored, just a casual conversation. And I was like, whoa, wait, hold up. Wait, like what is going on? Right. Yeah. But I didn't react. It stopped me. And all the kids were like, you can't say that, like full on. And I was like, wait, stop, time out. What is happening right now? Right. Yeah. But then it was like, okay, in my head, I'm like, okay, this kid needs more. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, how can I give more without overwhelming this kid to really think about language? But then thinking about going back to the neighborhood, I'm like, okay, this kid is coming from outside the city. Okay, how can we get their families involved without pushing too hard, right? Because I could be like, well, Miss Dreme said to talk. Miss Dreme said, I get a lot of that, right? Like, Miss Dreme. So then they call, are you Miss Dreme? Yeah, Miss Dreme. And so I had an assignment where I asked the kids, because I love timelines. So we were doing timelines, and I put like my grandmother's age, my great-grandmother, my mother, I put my age. We were talking about the civil rights era. Yeah. And I said, you see this timeline? All your parents and grandparents are in this block. Yeah. I said, go home and talk to them about what they did in the 60s and 70s. So they go home and they do their assignment. They come back and I said, okay, I'm going to have my grandmother call. So they know I was like, I'm doing the assignment too.
Yeah.
And I learned so much stuff because and then so my grandmother's calling. She's talking to all the kids.
That's awesome.
And then the kids were able to tell me what their parents, grandparents, all that stuff. So my mixed kid, my biracial kid, he's like, I talked with my white grandmother and she was saying a lot of problematic things, Miss Dreme. But you could tell his brain didn't register that it was problematic until he took my class. Right. And then I had another kid, a Muslim kid from Sudan. His mother came the next day, and I was like, man, I'm going to get in trouble if this woman's coming up to me. So she walked, she's like, hey, I need to talk to you. And I was like, yes. She was like, you gave my son an assignment to talk to his grandparents. I said, yes. I said, how did it go? And she was like, it's amazing. They're having a relationship now. They're talking every day. She was like, I don't know what you had them talk about, but it's working. Yeah. Oh, that is cool. Because I was like, that's a nice, it was a nice moment for them to feel connected. But then they also saw the point of the history class. They saw the point of the timeline. They saw the point. Oh, this is why we learn history.
Right. And that their family members were expert.
Yes.
Where I think anytime schools can say to kids, the people you come from are smart, are expert, are important, is so important. Because our education system doesn't do that.
No.
For many, many kids along many lines of identity. And that's so important.
The value in the stories around you.
Right.
My grandmother grew up in Alabama. And she was saying how there used to be a bell that used to ring. She grew up in the countryside. That if there was ever an emergency, they would ring this bell. And so when the KKK were around, the bell would be rung. Thinking about the year and being like, how old am I? Yeah. And my grandmother is just casually talking about this. And my kids are like, yo, your grandmother's okay? And I'm like, yeah. And it didn't seem so far. It didn't seem so historic. Right. It didn't seem deep and dark because they were able to hear my grandmother, not my great-grandmother, my grandmother's voice. Right. And they're like, well, Miss Dreme, at the time you're 27. They were recognizing time isn't so far.
Yeah. That's a beautiful story.
Thank you, Lisa, for sitting in the chair and sharing your stories. I truly, truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the invitation. This was such a treat. I love what you're doing with the podcast, the chair, with so many spaces in which you're moving. And I am so grateful for the day I found your handouts on the copier and sat down at lunch.
Welcome to the chair, where Miss Dreme always has a story.
Thank you for listening to an episode of The Chair. I, of course, would love your continued support. Let me know what you think of this episode by doing all the things. Subscribe, comment, and come back next week, every week. Enjoy the rest of your beautiful day. Or if you are like me, enjoy that moonlight and that one star under all your city lights. Love you. Talk to you later.
The chair.
How long I gotta wait for a press record?
Go.
We support her. Shit.
Do your...
Welcome to the chair, where Miss Dreme always has a story. Where we share